Hi everyone, my name is Linda Lee and I am running for City Council District 23, which has a lot of neighborhoods including Beyside-Hills, Belrose, Oakland Gardens, Fresh Meadows, I'm forgetting a bunch, Holliswood, Queens Village. So there's a lot of different neighborhoods and it covers a very large geographic area from the Long Island Queens border till about the LIE, and Little Neck Douglaston as well, to about 188th and then all the way down to Jamaica Avenue. So it's one of the few districts I think that sort of looks like a square. And we have the second highest. So we have 43% Asians that live in our district. And we have the second highest Asian district in all of New York City, next to Peter Coup. Peter Coup, District 20 right now is the highest, and we're actually the second highest, which I'm very proud to say. It's a very diverse community. There's a lot of South Asian, Sikh, Muslim, Korean, Chinese. So it's a very, very diverse district, and you can tell by the food in the different parts of the neighborhood, which is my favorite part. So everyone who works on my campaign knows that I'm very driven by what to eat. So the way I knock on doors 100 days, my motivation is, okay, what am I gonna eat after this in which neighborhood? But yeah, I mean, I never thought that I would be running for any sort of public office, elected office. I have always been in the nonprofit sector my whole career. And this was never anything that I thought would happen, but it was really through my nonprofit work that I realized, wow, it's all about policy. And this is why it's so important for us to have a seat at the table and for us to have that voice. So just a little bit about my background. I don't know how many of you guys know where Elmira, New York is, but that's where I was born. We're known for our prison system up there. That's probably the only thing we're known for, but it's somewhere in between Binghamton and Ithaca. And so I grew up around a very, non-diverse. It's not diverse. It's very white. It's a very white neighborhood. My family actually came in the 70s. So my great uncle, who is Joseph DiNardo, met my great aunt during the Korean War when he was serving there. And that's how they actually sponsored my whole family to come. My father actually came in the 70s to study at Ohio State University for his master's degree in mechanical engineering. And he still to this day does not miss an Ohio State University football game. That's his thing. He's totally into football, college football. So they raised me and my sister. We lived in Elmira for about 10 years and then moved to Long Island for about 20. And it's interesting, they set up small businesses. They were small business owners like so many Korean folks coming over during that time. And they owned a dry cleaning store in Long Island. And it's interesting because I don't think I really thought about this story too much until I actually started campaigning or until I started working at KCS, because I remember very, very distinctly there was this one memory that I have when I was in 7th grade where my father was at his store. There was a customer who came in, and what had happened was because of the dry cleaning and the chemicals, the buttons on her jacket got ruined, right? So my father had to unfortunately tell this customer, hey, listen, I'm really sorry, but your jacket got ruined because of the dry cleaning chemicals. And she started, of course, yelling and screaming. And I just had to sit there as a 7th grade girl watching my father get yelled at, berated at, and he couldn't speak as clearly. He had an accent and he was trying to defend himself. And I think he basically was trying to tell her, listen, because she's like, I brought it to so many dry cleaning places before, this never happened, you must be doing something wrong, you're crooked, you're trying to cheat me. But what my father was explaining to her is that, listen, if you had taken it to a dry cleaning store prior and they had actually done it correctly, then this should have happened regardless. And so that means that the people you were taking it to before weren't doing it correctly. But I remember seeing this happen and being feeling very frustrated at the fact that I couldn't speak up. Like I shut down and I just sat there and I just was so frustrated and embarrassed, to be honest. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And I remember going home that night and I just started hysterically crying because I was so mad that I didn't speak up on behalf of my father and I didn't actually defend him and I didn't say anything. And I think that's why growing up throughout my life, I've really learned what it means to be a voice for the community and to speak up. And so, I graduated from college, thought I wanted to go into investment banking, and then got a job working for a summer camp for inner city kids from the Bronx. And that totally just changed the entire trajectory of my career. And I actually ended up going to China for a year teaching English, and then came back, did my master's in social work, interned at a bunch of different places, Beacon programs included. And I remember working at the New York State Health Foundation after grad school, and we would give about $25 million away in grants to New York State. And it was such a great experience, and that's really where I got my exposure to policy, but it didn't really quite click yet what that meant. And I think working in a foundation, one of the things that we always wondered was, is this money actually making an impact and difference in the communities that they're serving, or are they just putting together these nice reports for us because we're the funder, right? So I remember after working there a few years, I really thought to myself, I don't know what it is I'm meant to do later in life, but I just feel like the next step is I need to have that on-the-ground experience, and I need to really fully understand what are the barriers and challenges in the community, and what does the community really face, right? So this job opportunity at a nonprofit called KCS came up, Korean Community Services, and that's where I've spent the last 11 and a half years or so of my career. And it has been one of the most profound, life-changing experiences in my life. It is through working at KCS that I've learned to really, really appreciate my roots, right, as a second gen. I don't think I fully really appreciated it before, but I really learned to appreciate where I come from. And I took this job because I wanted to give back to my community, but I don't think I really fully understood how much I would be getting back in return just by serving. And it's really through working at KCS, because we have a lot of city contracts, state, federal government contracts, where I learned, wow, some group of most likely older white folks in Albany are telling me or making laws to decide how I deliver my services in Flushing in my mental health clinic in a predominantly non-English speaking community. And so the question really became very evident to me, like, if they're not understanding the intricacies and the nuances of our communities, then how is it that they're creating policies and legislation that really reflect the community? And so that's when I really realized, wow, okay, this is super important for us to have a seat at the table. We really need to educate legislators. We need to inform them what our needs are. And we need to actually come up with common sense policies that benefit the people that they're supposed to serve, right? And so that's largely what I've been doing my whole career throughout KCS. And it's interesting because I still remember in 2011, I think, when Grace Meng was actually in the State Assembly, we were at an event at downtown Flushing, and she kind of whispered in my ear, like, you should think about running for something. And I was like, get out of here. Like, you are crazy. There is no way ever that I would ever think about running. Like, I thought all politicians were horrible, corrupt people. So it's kind of funny that I'm trying to run for office at this point. But, you know, I really thought this is not something that I would ever have imagined. But throughout my time working at KCS, I thought to myself, you know what, maybe this is something that I should think about, and maybe this is, you know, maybe I have to at least try to advocate for the community. And to be honest, it wasn't really something that I was thinking about seriously until COVID hit. And once the pandemic hit, that's when I was like, oh my God. Like, I think for the first 6 to 8 months, literally, I wasn't even thinking. It was just go, go, go mode. Like, how do we make sure that our seniors are getting fed? How do we make sure that, you know, parents are surviving mentally with like kids doing remote and hybrid? You know, how do we make sure that, people who have lost their jobs and need to apply for unemployment can apply, because the website is only in English and that's it. So a lot of the websites that were there for the vaccines, the tests, everything, it's only in English. So language access, cultural access, all of those things, you know, it's not something that is inherent in our systems that are in place. And so I think that's something that we need to change. I think that's a lot of what I want to try to do. And, you know, I think after the pandemic, I realized, wow, okay, maybe now's the time. Like, maybe now is the time where we need to get a different group of leaders to step up and to really try to fight on behalf of the community. And so that's largely why I decided to do it this time around versus maybe waiting a little bit later. And so I really want to try to fight for all those quality of life things that people in our part of Queens are there for. You know, we have some of the best schools in the district, and so we need to keep fighting for expanding a lot of the programming out there for the children and to make sure that everyone has access. Whether it be expanding gifted and talented programs, whether it be making sure that we have more people who have access to SHSAT courses or whatever it is, or to maybe even expand the specialized high schools and how many we have, and really kind of encourage people to have that education system, which is why a lot of our immigrant communities came here, was for better education and to have that path forward for a lot of their children. And for me, older adults, seniors, that's a large part of what I do at KCS, and it's very important for me on a personal level because my grandmother raised me and my sister while my parents were working, and towards the end of her life, I was the one that took care of her, and so I would be the one to change her adult diapers, give her showers, clip her toenails, and if you're not if you've been a caregiver, I think it just gives you a different level of appreciation for how important those services are and how much they're needed. And so expanding older adult services is huge for me because I live in a district where we have one of the highest percentages of older adults, but the transportation system is non-existent. So how do we make sure that people are aging in place, that they do it safely, and that we can bring more in-home services to them? And so I know that there are a couple places that are expanding on those services now, like Northwell, as well as obviously H&H hospitals. But how do we expand those services to make sure that it is not just Band-Aid solutions, but that we're changing the system actually from the ground up, and that it's not a hospital system, but it's a healthcare systematic change that we make. Yeah, and just obviously transportation is a big one because a lot of folks, if you don't have a car in our district, you can't get around. The bus routes are a mess. And whenever people ask, oh, how do we get there? Do we take a subway? I'm like, no, there's no subway. You could take it to the end of the 7 train and then take a few buses after that. But I don't think folks realize how much of a transportation desert it is. And just making sure that the streets are safe and that our seniors are safe, that they feel comfortable going out. And so I think for all these reasons, and hopefully with the experience I have, actually trying to deliver services and trying to implement a lot of the policies that the city has put out, I've been able to see a lot of where I think the holes and the gaps are. And so those are the areas that I want to try to improve upon, as well as increasing budgets for Department for the Aging and other areas in the city. So thank you so much.